Roy Keane, a name that would make even some serial bullies like Sergio Ramos, Pepe and Zlatan tremble. But where did this man, or shall we say this legend, this enigma, come from? How did he go from being a cheeky Irish child kicking a ball in the south of Ireland to the relentless warrior who captained Man United's most dominant era? Was he always this fiery? Did he just wake up in the morning and choose violence? Or did football create the Roy Keane we know today? This is the story of Roy Keane. Roy Keane was born in Cork, Ireland in 1971, a city better known for its rebellious county spirit than for producing talented footballers. But young Roy wasn't about to let geography get in the way. Not at all. From a young age, he was obsessed with the game, but not the brilliant goals or the fancy moves down the wing. What impressed him over and over again were the spectacular interventions of the centre-backs and holding midfielders and, of course, the sheer energy and playmaking of some of the best midfielders in English top flight at the time. Understandably, this was reflected in his boyhood heroes. The likes of Ian Rush and Gary Lineker were bursting the nets in England at the time, but young Keane wasn't even remotely impressed. That's why, as a Celtic and Tottenham supporter, he was a big fan of Liam Brady and Glenn Hoddle, but his childhood idol was Brian Robson, the famous Man United midfielder who scored a total of 99 goals for the Red Devils. Keane got his first taste of professional football at Rockmount AFC, a small regional club in the city of Cork. Even as a kid, Keane wasn't just there to play, he was there to win, no matter what. But winning wasn't always easy when you are the smallest boy out of all your teammates. Indeed, Keane had the most motivation and energy of all the lads, but his height at this point in his childhood prevented him from standing out as much as he would have liked. To compensate, he took up boxing at the age of 9 and combined the two sports for several years. By 1982, when he was finishing his first year at Rockmount, Roy was developing into a much more promising footballer, and his potential was highlighted when he was voted Player of the Year. After 8 years there, he moved to Cove Ramblers, a bigger club in Cork with a reputation for giving young talent a chance. Already 18 years old at the time, Roy often had to take on other temporary jobs, often involving manual labour, while he waited for his breakthrough on the pitch. But his performances didn't just catch the eye of the locals, they also attracted the attention of a certain Nottingham Forest scout, who saw more than just an eager kid. He saw hunger, grit and the potential for something great. Roy Keane spent just one season with the Ramblers, making 23 appearances and scoring 1 goal before moving on to his first big club. And, well, Forest were the real deal at the time. In that decade, they won 2 European Cups, a First Division title, 4 League Cups, as well as the European Super Cup, the Community Shield and the Intercontinental Cup. And they did it all under the legendary Brian Clough. Yes, there was the potential for high pressure in front of Keane, but he coped brilliantly. It certainly wasn't a smooth ride for the then 19-year-old Roy Keane, who sometimes struggled with Clough's attitude. There was even an incident when Clough punched Keane in the chest after a costly mistake against Crystal Palace in the FA Cup, but overall the two had a great time together, working as top professionals and talking football all the time, as Keane himself admits. But let's talk a little bit more about the reasons for his forthright attitude. As you know, he's currently a pundit on Sky Sports, and even there we see his strong remarks about dozens of top stars. For example, when he described Erling Haaland as a League Two player. Keane has always been a player who won't spare an opponent, and it is for this reason he is so revered at Old Trafford. But why is that? Well, to put it simply, life hasn't always been easy for Roy Keane. Growing up in a tough environment and constantly having to prove himself has shaped his attitude. He was once overlooked for the Irish youth team because of his small stature. He hated losing, and that rejection fueled a fire that turned into his trademark aggression. Every training session, every tackle, every heated moment on the pitch, Keane was there, and those moments proved to be the difference between success and failure. And as Keane's stardom continued to rise, the big move was only a matter of time. Despite interest from the likes of Barcelona and Real Madrid, Keane chose to follow his admiration for Man United. Aside from the big three, however, there was another big club from the early 1990s on the hunt for Keane's signature, Blackburn Rovers. And it was the Lancashire club's interest that prompted Brian Clough to describe Keane as a greedy child. By the end of his time at Nottingham, 1992-93, Keane had developed into a world-class talent. He bagged a total of 10 goal contributions in 40 games, playing as a box-to-box midfielder, which was impressive when combined with the other valuable work he did for the team. So, long story short, he was wanted by almost every major club in England. Despite this, Nottingham wanted to extend his contract in the face of interest from Blackburn and Man United. Keane, however, valued his impact and demanded a huge wage, something Nottingham could not afford. At the time, Brian Clough also said, "He's the hottest prospect in football, but he he's not going to bankrupt the club. Finally, after a few weeks when Keane had already agreed terms with Blackburn, Sir Alex Ferguson appeared on the horizon. The Scottish manager has a proven track record in such negotiations, as he did throughout his time at the Red Devils. So here is what happened. Blackburn had agreed to sign Keane for a fee of £4 million, but once the contract had been agreed, Kenny Dalglish, the Blackburn coach at the time, realised they did not have the correct paperwork to complete the transfer. And because it was Friday night, the offices were locked up for the weekend. This is where Ferguson's mastery kicked in. As soon as Man United realised what was happening, he called Roy Keane to join them instead of Blackburn. And that was the end of the transfer saga, as Sir Alex & Co had the paperwork in place, and it was only a matter of formality to complete the move for a fee of £3.75 million, a British transfer record at the time. When Roy Keane joined Manchester United in 1993, it was the start of a new era. Sir Alex Ferguson had just begun to build his iconic team, and Keane became the beating heart of it all. And while it was an expensive move for the time, what United got in return was priceless. Keane wasn't just another midfielder, he was a general in the middle of the park. From the moment he donned the red shirt, his tenacity, leadership, and refusal to accept mediocrity set him apart, and it didn't take long for success to follow. Keane won 7 Premier League titles, 4 FA Cups, and most famously, the 1999 Champions League as part of the treble-winning team. But what about the stats? Well, for a player who was certainly not expected to score goals, he was excellent in the final third, both as a scorer or a man to make the final pass. Between 1993 and 2005, Keane made 479 appearances for United, scoring 51 goals and laying on 36 assists for a total of 87 goal involvements. He wasn't a playmaker or a goal scorer in the traditional sense, but Keane's contribution went far beyond the numbers. His goals were often crucial, turning games in United's favour, and his presence on the pitch was enough to inspire and, of course, terrify teammates and opponents alike. But when it comes to iconic performances from Roy Keane, well, any Man United fan who actively followed the Red Devils in the late 1990s will recall his fabulous header against Juventus in the 1999 Champions League semi-final. United were 2-0 down at the start of the game after Pippo Inzaghi's 11th minute brace. Keane, however, took it upon himself to bring his team back into the game. His header started the comeback, and despite picking up a yellow card that ruled him out of the final, he was United's driving force. Even Ferguson called it the most selfless act I've seen on a football field. Aside from the goal, Keane's relentless running, winning the ball and helping his teammates became one of the moments of his career. And when you talk about Roy Keane and his highlights, you can't ignore the story of Alfie Haaland. It's something that's been told 1,000 times, but let's get into it. The feud began in 1997 when Keane injured his knee trying to tackle Haaland. As Keane lay on the ground in agony, Alfie stood over him, shouting in his face and accusing him of faking it. In reality, however, Roy had torn his ACL and was sidelined until the end of the 1997-98 season. Fast forward to 2001, and Keane retaliated with studs planted on Haaland's kneecap that left him on the turf in excruciating pain. Later, in his autobiography, Keane admitted the challenge, which earned him a hefty fine and an 8-match ban, was deliberate. It was the moment that cemented his reputation as the most feared man in English football. But aggression wasn't all that defined Keane. During his time at Old Trafford, he also managed to break into the top 10 in the Ballon d'Or voting, a near impossible feat for a midfielder who had never scored more than 11 goals in a season. After his heroics in the 1998-99 season, Keane finished 6th on the list, only the second Man United player to do so after David Beckham, who won the Silver Ball. As memorable as Keane's time at Man United was, the way he left was equally memorable. The final pages of his United career were all about drama. In an interview for Man United TV in 2005, an injured Roy Keane criticised almost every one of his teammates after a 4-1 defeat at Middlesbrough. Rio Ferdinand was on Roy's radar, as were the other players who made mistakes in that miserable defeat: Edwin van der Sar, Darren Fletcher, Alan Smith, John O'Shea, and others. As a result, he was fined £5,000 as the club tried to destroy all copies of the tape. In the end, he played no more games for Manchester United, as Ferguson decided it was time for him to go. So he left Manchester for another great British city, Glasgow, where he wore the colours of Celtic for just one season. Yes, 2005-2006, Roy Keane won 2 more trophies, the league title and the League Cup, making him one of the 3 most decorated Irishmen in history, sharing first place with legends Dennis Irwin and Ronnie Whelan. And that brings us to the end of today's video. Where do you rank Roy Keane among the best midfielders of the last 30 years? Leave your comments below. Also, don't forget to like and subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. This was the untold story of Roy Keane, and if you want to know more about the most successful season of the last club of Keane's career, Celtic, click on the link below. Catch you in the next one.